Welcome to another episode of Hey Mama, where we talk all things motherhood and all around female empowerment. I'm joined here today with Molly O'Callaghan, who is a senior physiotherapist with a special interest in pelvic health physiotherapy. Is that right? I got the title right?
Yes.
So you are a senior physiotherapist at Inspire Health Services. Is that right?
That's right. Yes.
So is that just a Queensland thing, or how many studios or clinics would you say are here in Australia?
First of all, thank you so much for having me. And so Inspire Health Services is in Albion and West End in Brisbane. So we have 2 clinics, and we have a physiotherapy team, an exercise physiology and exercise science team, dietetics, massage as well. So spread across the 2 clinics, and I work as a pelvic health physiotherapist and musculoskeletal physiotherapist as well.
Yeah, it's a really awesome setup. I'm a big fan of how you've got all of that into one clinic or 2 clinics, and you work really well together. So I actually go to the physiotherapist and I love to go to the one in West End, and then I've actually got a program with an exercise physiologist because I actually love being instructed and have some structure where I don't have to think. So even though I'm qualified in PT, I still love to have another expert look at myself and then design a program for me to improve what I need to improve for my goals. So I really love the whole concept. Who is Molly, and what makes up the person that you are?
So I guess first and foremost, I really do am a passionate physiotherapist. So I love what I do, and I love working in pelvic health, and it's a huge passion of mine. And I just love learning and understanding and getting to meet as many people I can as in this industry, because it's so vital and important for all women to understand our body and get to learn, I guess, a bit more and educate ourselves more on what is normal for our body. So besides from that, though, I'm a runner, and I'm a friend and a partner and a daughter, and I love my sort of community in Brisbane. And I grew up here, but I grew up overseas as well in Southeast Asia, and I've lived overseas in the UK too, and I've worked there as a physiotherapist. So I've been blessed to travel a lot and see a lot of the world, and work in different environments and live in different environments as well.
So when you worked over in Southeast Asia and the UK, did you say?
So I lived when I was young in Southeast Asia, so I never worked there. Okay. And so I grew up there, and I worked in the UK. I worked in London.
Okay. And did you find that we women have the similar problems with our like a pelvic floor and
pelvic health? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I worked in a private practice clinic over there as well, and saw similar similar conditions, similar pelvic health concerns. It's all something that I guess is still, we're not getting enough education out there. We're not seeing enough education out there. So we're still seeing a lot of similar things in different countries. Definitely if you go to, I guess Southeast Asia or other places as well, we might see different things occurring based on our healthcare system, or based on hospital care and birth care as well. But, from my experience between London and here, it's all very similar.
Okay. And what would you say are those similar symptoms or concerns, or tell us a little bit about that. About what you do.
I guess the biggest things that I see as a pelvic health physiotherapist, firstly, can be pelvic pain and muscular pain as well, or injuries. But secondly, from that, I can see incontinence, I can see prolapse, I can see pelvic floor dysfunction, so weakness in pelvic floor. I can see also pelvic pain, so pain with intercourse or pain through daily life. And then, alongside of that sometimes can be endometriosis or different conditions from there too. So that's typically what I might see. And then postnatal, so pregnancy, any sort of pelvic girdle pain or anything in pregnancy, and then postnatally sort of return to exercise or recovery postnatally too.
Yeah. So the pelvic girdle pain, so has that got to do, that's just the pelvic health all round, you mean? Or is that the pelvic floor, like does it all work together?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. There is a few different things, I guess. I can see women in pregnancy for just postural advice and postural correction, depending on where bub is and how forward bub is. Our posture can change quite a lot in pregnancy. But also I can see specific sort of pain that occurs towards the front of the pelvis itself. Yeah. So right at the center or at the back, sort of bottom muscle and pelvic joints at the back too, where you can get quite a lot of pain sometimes where that ligament laxity occurs. So I can see that as well in pregnancy too.
Yeah. And what made you so passionate? Like what sort of experience did you have in your life that turned you to a physio, first of all, and then to get into the pelvic health path? Why are you so passionate?
I guess becoming a physiotherapist, I loved anatomy, I loved understanding science, and I loved biology, and I loved sports as well. I really enjoyed any sort of sports I could get my hands on, and I loved health, and I thought physiotherapy sounds like a good way to put those two together. And that's what happened.
Quite common, isn't it?
Yeah, and from there I started to, I guess, see a lot more women in different stages of life, and pelvic floor became a big part of that. So understanding first people's menstrual cycles and how that can relate to what they're feeling and what they're going through, and then it started unraveling from there in terms of some people presenting with incontinence and different things along those lines that we really, as a sort of a graduate at university, don't get a lot of information on how to manage these things. So I started to really delve in and do a lot more development and a lot more courses and understanding all these different things and how to help manage and treat these different things too, and sort of opened a huge passion box for me, I guess, in this area where I love working now and seeing women come in for different things that sometimes they've never talked to anyone about before, or sometimes, having a very open conversation about it, and working towards their goals and what they want to achieve. So it's always, it's a very great area to work in, and, I guess educate more as much as we can about the need for it too.
Would you find that a lot of the problems that women experience in the pelvic region is taboo and that we don't like to talk about it much? Or like you just sort of touched on there, that women will come to you and they're telling you things that, that they haven't talked about with anybody before. They feel like it shouldn't be happening to them, and that's why they don't talk about it? Or, where do you think that come from too?
Absolutely. I think it is sometimes taboo, and, it's not something that people sit around a table and talk about openly and honestly a lot, and, if any, and it's something that I really want to break that stigma down, and I really want to help educate and understand that we can break that stigma down, because as soon as you start to talk about it with others, everyone has something else to say too, and suddenly it's not just you, and suddenly there's a lot more information out there and people can share their similar experiences or different experiences, or where they've had help and where they've sought help from too. So definitely I feel like it's slowly becoming a little bit more something that people are talking about, but still a long way to go.
Yeah, so I know I talk about it with my mum friends, and we kind of joke about it, and I think that that's how we get through life. Like we joke about every time you have a child, your pelvic floor gets weaker. At what stage would you say to, like, we laugh about it, but at what stage would you say that you need to come in and get some help from a specialist like yourself?
So I guess sometimes one thing that often I get told is that people say, oh, I've got a bit of leakage, but that's just normal. And it's not, you know, it's something that we can help to try and manage as well. So
is that leakage? Sorry, I just want to clear up. Is it leakage like just throughout the day you're walking around and you get a bit of leakage? Or is that like, oh, I've sneezed and I get leakage?
Well, it would be both. So, but definitely I think what you're saying is that leakage with a cough or a sneeze or a laugh, that's something that, you know, often people can say, oh, that's normal, but it's something that we can sort of help to manage and improve and try to improve. So that's definitely something that physiotherapy can work on. But it's often something I hear people say, oh, that's sort of just normal. So
after I've had 3 kids, so
yeah,
I've got 4 children.
Yeah, exactly. So, but the other things that we can help with, so incontinence, so urinary incontinence, and urgency as well, that sort of busting, I put the key in the door to the house and I feel this busting urge to rush to the loo. Those sorts of things, that bladder urgency is something
like just out of nowhere, like not just
out of nowhere, sort of going, oh gosh, I've got to rush to the loo.
Otherwise,
something that you feel like you can't defer as well. So those sort of symptoms we can help to manage. Bowel related sort of urgency too is something that we can help with. Any sort of, again, pelvic pain, so pain with intercourse, like I said, or pelvic pain with exercise, or, you know, back pain as well. Those are things that we can help to manage too. And then a heaviness sort of sensation in your pelvic floor or your pelvis, so any sort of heaviness or pressure sensations, those are something that we can help to manage and understand and educate a bit more on as well.
Yeah, what's the heaviness? Like, is it walking around with their heaviness, or
heaviness can be presented in a lot of different ways. Oftentimes there can be a heaviness that maybe comes on in the day or comes on after a lot of impact exercise or something like that. But it also can start from the beginning of the day. So a heaviness or a pressure sensation or a bulging sensation, sometimes what we look for is to assess for a prolapse as well. So understanding sort of what the heaviness actually is and what that means, and then what sort of activities bring it on or not, and assessing for something like that as well.
That's really interesting, because I think that some women may even just be walking around with these kinds of symptoms and not even know that it can be an issue. Like, even with back pain, I would probably sort of not think of it as a pelvic health area. I would think, oh, maybe something's going on with my back or my glutes or something, but it could actually be pelvic health related.
It could be, yes. Yeah. It can definitely be your back, but it is also something to consider when you're getting your back pain. And is your back pain also related to something else that you're doing, or is your back pain you also have incontinence as well? You know, there's different things like that you want to look at and sort of assess and see. And your pelvic physiotherapist can help. And that's something that I do, sort of to understand what sort of the correlation is between them, or, you know, and managing both as well.
Yeah. So what would you say to a woman who wants to go back to exercise, right? Or she wants to go and sign up to a gym, and she's been told, like, by a doctor to not squat after having babies?
So my first sort of thought is, you know, obviously, why did the doctor say that, first of all, and what the reason for, and understanding that first and foremost is the biggest thing. So, but on top of that, we squat every day in our life. Every time I stand up from a chair and sit back down again, it's a type of squat. Every time, you know, and as a new mum too, a million lifts every day of picking up, you know, the little one and doing all that sort of side of things too. So a squat is part of our daily life. So in terms of it as an exercise, why is a medical professional saying not to, and understanding that first, because there can be specific reasons why they've suggested not to. If it's a matter of pelvic floor strength and understanding that, or pelvic floor dysfunction, like we've talked about, how can we help to manage that further? What sort of exercises can we do to help get to a point where your strength and coordination and endurance is at a good spot to start to consider maybe weighted squats and things like that? Is there some support that we need down there to help just manage that and make sure that we're looking after pelvic floor for life. But I always like to consider everybody, not just as their pelvic floor, but as their whole body.
Yeah, and their environment and what's happened to them, like their history and all of that kind of thing.
Exactly. And we have to consider how exercise is not only beneficial for our muscles and our cardio system and our mental health and, a way to socialize, all of those things that exercise can be such a great thing for. We can't always focus sometimes on going, okay, we can't do this, but maybe how can we modify it, or how can we get to a point where we can?
Exactly. Yeah, not forever, like not just sentence someone to, oh, you should never squat again after you've had children.
Yeah, exactly. So it's always understanding the whys and then understanding what can we do about it as well.
Yeah. So how important would you rate strength training for mamas?
Strength training in general? Like the whole body?
Yeah, the whole body for sure, because I think it's important that mums, I've spoken to a lot of mums where they think, oh, isn't it walking enough? Like we're still just not there with educating on the importance of strength training. Like you just mentioned before, that we squat every day with our babies. We do lifts with our babies constantly, all that kind of thing. So I just want, from a professional point of view, speaking to you, how important do you consider strength training?
Very. Yeah. It's something that I guess, again, like looking at all of those tasks that you just said, we're lifting bub, where our body has changed so much. So you've had 10 months of pregnancy, and then you've got, now our body's changed completely again, and we're looking after a little one as well. So it is something that you want to adjust back and learn your posture again, learn, endurance and strength and balance. But it is very important. And again, it is that holistic sort of experience of health. So mental health, strength, well-being, cardio. We want to make sure that we're putting our body in its best stead. But that's, also being a new mum, time is different as well, and how much time we have. So understanding, I guess, energy levels and sleep, all of those things play a big part, and not pushing ourselves to do so much so early, but understanding what is the right amount for me. And that's where, health professionals come in and, like yourself, understanding what is the right amount of exercise to be doing, and making sure that that becomes a reality. Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of things that we do and go, okay, oh gosh, I don't feel strong enough to do that. I did before, but I don't now. And we might be putting ourselves at risk of injury if we sort of go back to things without sort of doing that strength work and rehab work as well. So you're sort of minimizing, preventing injuries along the way with strength training too.
Awesome. So before we wrap it up, I'd just like to ask, is there like a specific story of a mom or a woman, like a nice positive story where they've come to you and they've had a certain problem, and then you've gotten them to, because that's why we do what we do, right? We love to help people get to reach their goals. Is there a story that you'd like to, talk about?
You're putting me on the spot. I think my passion area is return to exercise, but I love return to running as well. I love running myself. So I do see a lot of women return to run. And it's always that sort of, I guess, workload of initially going, oh my gosh, I can't do a single leg tabletop, let alone a double leg tabletop. In Pilates, and I can't do a single leg bridge, and I'm so surprised and shocked at my body. I thought I could do this and I can't. And it's something that I see quite a lot. And again, I always say, look, you're not the only one. This is normal. But that nice progression of exercise and seeing pelvic floor strength change with regular exercise back to something like running and back to their goals is always really nice. And also sometimes seeing women who might have some leakage or something that they're noticing in their day, and then making sure we sort of manage that. And then all of a sudden, you know, I'm not leaking at work anymore. I feel so much better. I'm not having to worry about, you know, going to the bathroom and that sort of thing every day. So all of those things can be a bit more of a reality, that it's not just so much about return to exercise, but feeling a little bit more confident in one's own body every day. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
I can chase after the kids without having sort of any problems as well. All of those sorts of things are, you know, the great things about what I do.
The bracing yourself before you sneeze.
Absolutely.
That kind of thing. holding everything in. I remember when I was pregnant with my second, and I was actually running. I was doing the 5K. You know, what are they called on the Saturday? They're called the park run.
Park runs, yeah.
So I was doing the park run, and I found that as I was getting to about 20 weeks, I was running, and I could only do halfway, and I'd have to stop and do a wee. Like, there was a public toilet there, so I got to a stage where I'd run, and I wasn't leaking or anything, but it was just I had to do a wee, and then by the time I came back, had to do a wee again.
Yeah.
And then after I was recovered from having my baby, I remember sprinting was such an issue. You know, when I try to go back to sprinting, I would get that. That's what I would get. I would get that.
Yes.
Yeah. So what would you work on with a mama like that? You know, she's gotten the clear from the doctor. She started back exercising and running. You know, you're a runner yourself, so you know how much you know, I loved it. I loved getting back to sprinting, but then I was like, I was kind of scared to sprint because of that. So what would you recommend there?
So we have some really lovely running guidelines now, and I wrote them down actually because I didn't want to forget it. But a couple of physiotherapists in 2019 made a return to running guidelines postnatally, and it's such a great sort of resource of information. So they were Tom Goom, Granny Donnelly, and Rockwell, and they made some guidelines that we can use today. And that's sort of what I base my rehab on, is making sure that we can hold the pelvic floor for a certain amount of times and for a certain amount of repetitions, but then also more into the functional exercise return things of working into coordination. So when we're looking into something like sprinting, we want to get our body working fast and working into that coordination well. So you want to start drills that work into you know, that quick movement as well, and preparing our pelvic floor to try and understand and coordinate that better. And oftentimes the biggest thing is working on breath work, and understanding how our breath works with our body, how our breath works with our pelvic floor as well, and how our stride can affect that too. So it is sort of building into that prep work and intensity work, and starting from where we can and building into it too. You know, there's always, you know, every pelvic floor is different. You know, there's a reason, I think, for everybody that I can lift a certain amount and someone else can lift a different amount than me. We always have a different capacity of our bodies, and you know, making sure that we understand what our capacity is and not looking at someone else's capacity, you know, for our sort of benchmark too. So it is understanding that sort of functional pace of exercise and getting back to it, and then also looking at, I guess, the connective tissue side of things for the pelvic floor too. What is our connective tissue like, and what's our fascial support like in our pelvic floor, to make sure that we're supported from there as well.
Okay. And it's just prompted me to with another question. It's about, I saw, you know how on Instagram everybody's an expert, and there's I've got a lot of experts on Instagram that, you know, show photos of how we should be sitting when we go to the toilet and all this kind of thing. So I saw one the other day, and it said, be careful not to train yourself to go, like, do a wee just in case. Like, should we train ourselves to, but then, you know, other conflicting information is we shouldn't hold on to our wee. So what is the right answer, and is there a common ground?
Again, really good question. So just in case visits to the toilet aren't always something that, you know, I recommend, because if you're having some urgency, for example, and you're having bladder urgency, going to the toilet just in case all the time, you're sort of training your bladder to do that.
Yeah.
So we want to listen to our bladder urges, and we want to go when our bladder's at the right time. Now, in saying that, sometimes you might be sitting in a meeting for a couple of hours and you can't leave. And going to the toilet, I think just before that, when you know you're going to be out of action, away from the toilet for a prolonged period of time, I think is okay. You know, it's those visits where we go, okay, this is more of a reasonable visit for me, rather than I'm popping to a friend's house that's 10 minutes away. I don't need to go to the toilet now. I can go when I need to, when I get there. So that sort of side of things. So I think that's where some of that education is around making sure that we're listening to our right bladder habits. And then when we're talking about holding our bladder and sort of working on that, what have you sort of read along those lines when they're saying to try and wait and hold?
Oh no, just like that, just in case is don't do the just in case, but then also I've heard like don't hold on to your wee either. So yeah.
So there's always sort of, I guess, that guide.
where's the
Where's the middle?
You know, like where's the point where you go, oh, I should go.
Yeah. So when we get a sort of a nice, sensible urge, usually we feel that in our low tummy. When we've hit busting, we've gone too far.
It's good to know mums, right? Because you know what, I reckon mums do this a lot, is that like, well, I'll just do this and then I'll do a wee. Oh, I need to do a wee, but I'm just going to do this and I'm just going to do that and then I'll go and do a wee. Whereas like we say to our kids, you need to go.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I do hear that a lot of going, look, I'm holding because I just, I'm deferring my urge. It's there, but I'm doing this and all of a sudden I'm absolutely busted.
Yeah.
So it is,
and then that's when,
earlier.
Accidents did happen or something.
Exactly.
Happen,
yeah.
Right?
So you rush to the toilet because you're busting, and that's sometimes where you can see some leakage. So making sure that we're listening to our urges and not deferring until we're getting to that busting point, because yes, that's not ideal either. We want to listen to our bladder. It's usually giving us a good urge when it's time to go to the toilet. And sometimes, and in postnatal periods, we can sort of go, okay, actually, I don't feel like I'm getting the right urge, or I feel like I'm getting quite a lighter urge than I used to, or I'm not really feeling much at all. So all of these sorts of things are where we can look into, and your doctor can look into, and physiotherapy can, to actually understand what's normal for your bladder, and what's appropriate and what we should be looking for to start to re-educate better bladder habits.
Yeah, this is good, because even with the holding everything together, is it a normal thing to walk around every day and then when you feel the urge to sneeze that we should have to brace ourselves and hold everything?
So after delivery, bracing your pelvic floor can be more helpful to activate the muscles better to brace and stop any leakage. So before deliveries, pelvic floor usually sort of does that activation itself, but after deliveries, not so much. So it is something that, I will train women to brace when they sneeze, and brace when they cough, and brace when they lift, to make sure that they're doing that pelvic floor activation to support as well, and support that sort of abdominal pressure downwards too. So that's something that I usually do teach. Yes.
Yeah, awesome. I really like that. I think it's really important for our listeners to know that as well, because you don't necessarily mean that you've got a problem because you have to stop and brace yourself and sneeze. But at the same time, there is
just forming those bladder habits and pelvic floor habits again postnatally, getting back into that habit of routine of getting your pelvic floor. And usually after a while, I don't even really think about it anymore. I just do it. That's just part of life.
It's just the scary part after delivery for a little while.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh.
So where can we find you if we want to know more about what you do?
So you can find me on the Inspire Health Services website. I'm there, and you can call us on our reception sort of line as well. And I'm more than happy to always speak too. But yes, I'm across both clinics. I'm in West End and I'm in Albion. And like I said, I do a lot of musculoskeletal sort of injury management as well. So we have a brilliant team, which is really great. And like you said, we have a lot of integration sort of between us. So diet and exercise. It's really nice to be able to treat everybody and train everybody with that sort of allied health team around us. So it's always really, really great. That's where you can find me.
Oh, awesome. Well, so lovely to have you on, Molly, and I hope that our audience has gained some insight more about pelvic health, like what's normal, what's not normal, and when to seek help if they need to.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me on. It's great.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Hey Mama. You can find all the relevant links, including socials, in the description section of this podcast. If you want to find out more information about how I can help you build your best body after babies, then visit my website, www.thefitmummethod.com, for more info. Lastly, before you leave here today, if you've enjoyed listening, then please subscribe and share so you can help me to reach out to those mamas that also need to listen too.